Welcome back to another Read and Correct with me, Kindar, the Tiger Knights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And if you want to support me, that is on my Patreon. Actually, this is on Ream's story. Today, we are starting a new book, a new series. Series is called Jeremy, which is simply a working title, and the book is The Captain's Heart. This is chapter 1. Gralgiran Sel Helravnir studied the data floating before him, eyes flitting from one entry to the next, hunting for the inconsistency he knew was in the supply report, because he knew his crew. There, he planted a claw in the line for raw thernium. Raw thernium. Okay, raw should not be capitalized. I don't know. Actually, you know what? Thernium should. These should not even. These should not be capitalized at all. You know what? I'll see if it comes. I don't know if it's going to come back again. This could very well be a one-off word. He planted a claw in the line for raw thernium ore and flicked it to another screen. Quick typing brought up the historical record. He went back 11 years, which was when he'd brought his quartermaster on board. Anything before wouldn't be representative of Xeniel's requisitions. Next to that, he brought up the ship's consumption. It was higher than he expected, but the use of construction material wasn't something he kept track of. It was low enough it didn't justify the purchase. So, why had his quartermaster purchased twice what he usually did? He looked at their itinerary. The only unusual stop was at the Earther station that bordered Kelsirian space. It wasn't officially scheduled, so there was no reason to plan trading there. But he had brought Xeniel on board mainly on the strength of his quartermaster's unorthodox thinking, as well as his family contacts. While his superior had tilted ears on learning he had someone from the Tahalan pirate clan on his ship, and twice used that in their attempt to take the Bane from him, Xeniel's record was exemplary. If one ignored the smell of many of the trades his quartermaster engaged in. Gralgiran considered the stink worthwhile for the ability to get information from the pirate clan. And when his superiors had questioned his use of information obtained from wanted criminals, he had been quick to remind them that the Viper's Bane wasn't in space to enforce Kelsir or the Federation's laws. The Bane was out there hunting enemies of his people, and for as many laws as the Talhalan clan had broken over its existence, they were still Kelsirian, and they were positioned to hear things no one else did. Things that had, 3 times, led to the capture of agents working to undermine his people. A check confirmed that none of the subsequent stops showed signs they would have a shortage of thernium by the time they were scheduled to arrive. Xeniel could have information Gralgiran didn't have access to. The male was the quartermaster, after all. But his hunter instinct told him that wasn't it. Which left the Earther station, their unofficial stop. Xeniel knew about it, even if only the ship's hunter were in on the true reason for the stop. The male traded in information as much as in goods, and the ship was no more off-limit to him than any other places trade happened. Could he have arranged a trade with the equivalent on it? Everywhere in space were people anywhere in space, okay, where people lived, there were quartermasters and traders in things prohibited. Did Earthers prohibit trade of thernium? He brought up a new screen and asked for whatever information they had on Earthers' trading of it. As with anything dealing with other races, what came first was information on how that species dealt with the ore, starting with what they called it. The writing meant nothing to him. He'd never had to interact with Earthers, even if Kelsir was their patron in the admission process within the Federation. The word came with a phonetic spelling as well as an audio. Tungsten, the computer said. The lack of roll in the pronunciation felt odd to him, but he accepted it as how Earthers spoke. Each species has their idiosyncrasies. Idiosyncrasy. Idiosyncrasy. Really? You don't like that? Oh, okay. Idiosyncrasies. The rest of the information confirmed it wasn't a restricted material, unlike the one they'd be visiting the station to check. A check of the ore itself showed it to be among the rarer ones, which within territories the size of those that made up the Federation still meant there should be more than they'd ever need. But others were bound by trade contracts. If their territory hadn't been favored by the gods, they could be in a position where they needed to import it to meet needs. As such, it was possible the station would be in a situation where they couldn't fill those needs. With the right contact, it would place Xeniel in a position to turn the excess he'd bought into a tidy profit, some of which would be put within the ship's operating accounts. How his quartermaster might have an Earther contact, Gralgiran couldn't fathom. But considering the god he was named after, it shouldn't surprise him. Xenilaharan had a way of making things fall. Was known to make things fall in the way those she favored needed. Still, it wouldn't do for the male to forget his captain was a hunter. He needed to work harder at hiding his misdeed on the ship, even if the worst Gralgiran would do was have a talk reminding Xeniel that he couldn't simply do whatever he felt like. He wrote a message asking for an explanation, attached the purchase entry to it, and sent that to the quartermaster. And to be certain the mail couldn't claim it had been misfiled while he rearranged the inventory that would make his actions unquestionable, Gralgiran contacted supplies. Captain, Xeniel greeted him, ears forward quizzically. What can I do for you? You can look at the message I sent you. No, you can look at the message I sent and formulate an explanation. How are we doing? Gralgiran asked, stepping behind a pilot and placing a hand on his shoulder. On schedule, Tom answered. We will be crossing within unclaimed territories in 2 days. Why don't they just call it what it is? Filnian asked. They aren't unclaimed, they're disputed. The female's ears folded back. We and the Earthers both claim it as ours, so we've agreed not to establish any outposts within it. It's the same with the other territories. So why do they insist on it being called something else? The mind of a politician is the one place I refuse to hunt in, Gralgiran replied. He tightened his hand on his friend's shoulder and smiled when Tom looked up. But if anyone here knows, it's you. How about it? Any of your friends within Kelsir's backrooms ever talked about how the mind of those people work? My friends deal with the minutiae, not the intellects. So, Phoenician asked, then they know everything about politicians, don't they? You need to stop thinking that way. You might not agree with their decision or why they make it, but politics isn't the stupid's playground. Now that's settled, Gralgiran said, before Filnian could interject another comment. What's the travel time to the Earther station? It's 8 days there. Once we cross into unclaimed territory, Tom answered. When we actually get there depends on this little ploy you have Alex working on. Ploy? Gralgiran asked. The snort came from the sensor station. Captain Gral the Hunter, Kergerik said in the voice of a classic tale-teller, now breaks with tradition and approaches the prey bold as the sun and twice as bright. The bridge's crew burst out laughing. The male turned in his seat, still chuckling. We've all been with you too long to believe this is one of our regular trade stops. It's an Earther station. What are they going to have that we want? More than you think, Gralgiran replied, tone sharp. Earthers have just as much to contribute to the Federation as other species. Remember that not 3 centuries ago we were them. Our territory was smaller than there currently is, and we were still ushered in and, in time, proved ourselves worthy of sitting on the council. We are the ones bringing them in, so keep how you think about them to yourself. Better yet, go see a therapist and work out why you don't think they are just as worthy as we were. Sorry, Captain. Gergerik faced his board. All right, so you've established you know me well enough to know I'll stalk. How do you know Alex is involved? All eyes turned to the comm officer. Filnian's ears went sideways in embarrassment. I'm more interested in learning how than blaming anyone, Filnian. My mate's a tech in engineering. He was commenting on how Alex warned them to be ready for extra work in the coming days. Maintenance would be on schedule, so your hunt was the only explanation. Thank you. Please avoid talking about this off the bridge. This isn't an assault, just an investigation. I don't need the civilian crew worrying for nothing. Yes, Captain. He left the bridge to find out what exactly Alex meant with in a few days. He needed the alterations done well before they reached the station, not once they were there. Out! The sandy-furred male yelled as Gralgiran entered the engineer's office. He responded by letting the door slide close behind him and tilting an ear. Tom warned me you were on your way. I don't want to hear it. I'm not here to give orders, Alex. The snort was dismissive in the way he didn't tolerate from anyone who couldn't accomplish the things his engineer managed. Too often he had saved them, so even the captain gave him leeway. You're the captain. Every word that leaves your muzzle's an order. I'm just curious as to why you haven't started on the work. Meaning, get to work now. Gralgiran closed his muzzle on the protest. While ornery, Alex was perceptive and correct. Do I have your assurance the work will be finished well before we reach the station? Yes, the male replied dismissively. You'll be able to properly limp into the closest friendly port, and whatever scans they put us through will tell them that we had a malfunction with my reactor. It's like you think it's difficult to make it behave as if I don't know how to do my job, or you've settled me with a bunch of incompetent technicians. The door opened as Gralgiran stepped back under the heat of the engineer's glare. He spread his arm, fingers curled to show the lack of claws, and hoped it was submissive enough to placate the male. Instead, he rolled his eyes. How about you leave me to my job? The ship's captain hurried to leave the office. With a crescendo of music, Baktar Herr Firmik looked into Ermiel Sel Erhar's eyes and spoke those words that always made Gralgiran's first and on hand. My heart. The screen faded to white as the two males pressed their muzzles together tenderly, and the names of the actors scrolled along. No matter how often I watch these ballads, Lil Marie said, wiping a tear, it always hits me right. It always hits me here. She tapped her chest with her other hand. To search so long, and then, when you think it's all lost, to find your heart. Gralgiran nodded absently, calming the ache. He loved this ballad more for the same reason. To find his heart was a dream, but, unlike many, he'd willingly set aside that hunt to serve his people. One day, he would take it up. But for now, he found solace in the old stories. I really like how the ballad has them on opposite side of the battle, Litamir said, sitting between his sister's legs. Just how much more powerful does that make it? To discover your heart was your enemy, then that you almost killed him, but that you knew in time. But that you knew just in time. Little Mary slapped the top of her brother's head. Like you haven't seen this ballad dozens times already. And I can't be impressed each time? Just the way you shed a tear each time? What about you? Gralgiran asked Home, who was resting his head on his shoulder. I'm here for the company. Prefer a good space fight ballad over the classics. Please, no! Brolin pleaded from between Gralgiran's leg. All you ever do when we watch one of those is complain about how those moves can't be pulled off in whatever ship they're using. They're ballads, not documentaries. You don't hear Gral here whine about historical inaccuracies. Like I'd know what things were like a millennium ago. Fine. We don't hear you complain when we're watching one of the gods' ballads then. A traditionalist like you has to know how there should all go. Even I know that how they depict Thurexaniam isn't accurate. It's first bronze, not gold. I think those who make ballads are allowed to inject their preference into them. They're just stories, not gospel. Even when they're about the gods. Anyone interested in watching another? Brolin stood. I have to go. I have to get the training regiment ready for tomorrow. You're going to show up for yours? I never miss a chance to fight you. Litamir looked up at his sister. We probably should head home too. I'm sure that mate of yours will have enough dealing with the cub. I'm okay for another ballad or two, Crystal said, stretched on the other couch with Meritel on top of her. But can we make it something modern? I'd even go for El Ravnir's Quest, since that's set just a century ago. I'm good for that, Meritel said, her voice muffled from her muzzle being buried between the couch's back and Crystal's neck. Then I'm going to head out, Kelsirian said, stretching. Anything made in the last 50 years isn't worth watching. Gralgiran caught the male's hand before he walked off. Are you coming over tonight? Yeah, just let me know when you're done with this. We can watch something decent in your quarters. Show him Philistine's Gambit, Meritel said without moving. That's going to show him we still know how to make ballads, even if they aren't called classics. Don't worry, Gralgiran said. We'll watch something from my collection. I'll see you later then. You okay with Quest? He asked Home. Sure. His friend said, house closed, so don't move. You're comfortable like this. He placed an arm over his shoulder. Call up the ballad, Crystal. I think, after it, we both have to see someone to their bed. And that concludes chapter 1 of The Captain's Heart. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, that's a little iffy. It will be up on Ream's story. That is for sure, as well as my Patreon. I have not yet decided if I will be putting this up on any free sites. So yeah. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And if you want to support me, that is on Ream Story. I hope you have a good day. And, yep, see you next time.